설마 그러니 사마 자시들래 조개들래.
Good morning and hello everybody.
We'll begin with the opening prayers in the Yellow Prayer Book on page 1. All Mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All Mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Mandala offering on page 7.
Ram jam jam zo shen de jor pe so ma le lo ye lang de ber la na te nian zhou gong tu jie zong de so da le long ju du ba jin qi dang Hong Kong Jin Jin Chai Yong De Ma Jin Da De Zong Wen Gu Bo Jie Se Gu Ber Jie Dong Zin Xie Wa Sin Ji Lu Ber Dan En Men Ta Li Yong Ge Xin Yin Ga Ne Song Zhuo Ta Jie Jie Men Jian Lan Den Ne Lo Men Zhan Zhou Per Ve San Jie Tu Ma Sin Jie Lu.
An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms, if I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping, completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood.
Om Guru Deva Jai Kena Rena Mendra Bodhisattva Practices.
Page 10, requesting teachings.
Sen 金南耶三巴达罗耶塞热杰达瓦切中图蒙德巴耶去见可罗古德苏。
Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Gedulaya Samsara Dodi Gedala Baba Mela Chigo Bombo Pambo Toba Jawan Romba Gadula Manama Zoran there, woman chicken, your Polani to the Sayago Yamon, Ransom Chuka Musun to the Basava Mashabu, and there's another Church. Not so me Bonshava Gila, so sentient on the New Danjina. 다마초gen 도사도 그리고 또 주로 나발라 이나 누구는 차도근이 뭐 지시랑 게 이나 데레 데레는 진짜 지시랑 시바지 데 차도근 동상 지시랑 거 용진이 하정사고 쓰는 미고래 망인애들이 차도지 니모 시충충 소랑 맞춰 됐다고 해야지. 제가 쓰나무 개체 모든 때에 제가 강에 살짝 사비게 송화래지 이렇게 했나 그렇게 반을 병이게 소남제는 니샘제소 소남제에 저선 니샘은 탑도 같은 차도요. 때때제 밤에 가는 남지게 챙길 내본 거래. 셀람은 제가 노차양 때라탕, 세당양 때라탕, 이모양 때라탕, 이모가리 차도의 중해봐. 제가 중재미신 사촉세고 용진이 시나. 이 때는 다시 차도 중재 하고서 뭔가 사촉세를 놔도 또 평소 취조적으로 하는 상고서 있는 드니 딸 라리 소리면 송바지데 그 평소에 잠들 둔다 라소바 대사고 대사를 차도 랑장기야 뭐야 배는 도미대 다들 들이 와제들이 다들 박차자들 들이 박차도 모르는지 들이 가래 다 생을 박차죠 들이 많이 잠나들이 랑치진 혹시 잘라서 봤더니 차도 글쎄가 들이 갔다 통 약하고 봐라 대사로 차도들이 내다고 자꾸 요를
大家好，昨天是讲到这个中文版本的第11页上面第一季，三世诸佛以及诸圣者众二至无尽不断之转轮，一切众生所具一切善，具足欢喜心而随喜之。那今天应该是继续讲下去。怙主您于十方世界中，请以妙音支分海会音，遍转无垢殊胜法轮已，一切众生皆令成熟之。
나중에 지금 마다 보이는데 때 삼지가 나고 자시바 들었더니 비슷해 삼지가 초와돼서 척척거리 끼저 들었더니 끼지 수남돼서 저기 절절한 돌들이 메인들이 다다 들이 돌을 끼는 돌이야 들이 머리치지 들이 매매들이 다다다 들이 장촉잖아 들이 막가르르등이 성성이 통달 마도도르는 토리스는 이렇게 미성성 마가다는 미성성이 또 토리르지 토리르지 마가다 마도도르는 토리르지 능동지 그리고 마치라고 용 토리스이라고 능동지는 소차적인 경우에 상승적인 경우 그 사족성들이 sabti cha ti jama tamatini shak deshi mo khang shak ja teratini samte sabah cha teratse wa cha ti ra da so 这个你们装的，这也是这种他做上街光芒的，这种做过有的，这种做他就做了就做了，超说了给我觉得上这个人还是啥什么给我的边呢？这到时候这个说他不就哈嘞呀嘞，我都不做到了，这到上这个人上这种用的，这个品牌，这用啊就这么当了，这个品牌的这个这边上了当了，这大上讲我讲这上去了。这别人骂这个不会就是打过讲了，爬了的什么都大大唱个有嘞，这个这爬了的什么都的小唱个有嘞，小个嘞，小的大人就哪个不是，这哪个不是差的这一大些这个嘞，不过你等人出国家后哪不是打过家问一不过是上这边嘛，这中文就这个嘞，这个人多有了给啊这都有嘞。有呢，这工作给另外也不好搞有嘛，变得不过种的被下班不就这了，这不过这个搞成会多少的，我大这次打过的，我看了做了就这了，然后我上这个用地的哈过呢，这就是20阳光，20阳光，他的这打他的，当然给我到过这打他的，变得我说不把那些的生活有的，就是做，但你用啊也是这种错你介绍吧的。就是做养大去问我说，可是这上超市这个大的人的，说到我家，这个我干的是，当初就是这样了，这可是上超就做了的，这人这可是卡卡的嘛上，卡卡嘛的，这个节让你大进个就挂的，你么让你就挂的，上这个让你就挂的，这是逻辑，这倒是这个东西吧了。主要是这就是上地方不有的，上地用地，这到这用地他家都不准的这样个20阳到过20阳光，这20阳光，他的变得多比的他不就了，哈，你要不那个他把说大的这的，你到这上出什么就要说上新闻没把这了，这让个上出什么但就是这里的。강의들이 사자시보 고보 강의에서 우리 동당 대발라양 좀 너무하게 네 20m 중에는 전부 소야양 요 다다 삼지 차와든 삼지 양자양도 고는 그 삼지의 용진시 뒤치에서 마지막에 끼워는 공공 펼쳤고요. 삼지의 체체로 삼지의 용진 하고 그래 대를 도와를 두고 저 유를 뒤쓰는 거 망보요. 근데 쓰는 거 이제 뭐 하고 뭐래. 배를 총과지가 총강쳐서 정되나 다리 편게도 제 삼목으로 삼목이 얘기 표발을 두고요. 삼는 광게 대사도 저런 저서고요. 마서 그때 코티 하고 오면은 거기다 다 죽고 다가 총강이야 동고 삼주나. 제가 소소 어디 평용지 삼모던 그 콘데도 마음고 상속서 뛰저는 네 총강이 코스는 데 따로 쓰는 거 저런데 뜻다 쓰는 거 저런데 나다디 장투 만나나 송거리 드리지 이제 감정이 로봇 탐지 창제를 파악하더니 장보주고 모남디 이빙으로 리젝트하는 대파체반은 손을 담아줘도 되죠. 송 사직성 돈은 인핑을 넣어서 기세랑 고민을 나중에 탐색 다이 뒤스도 사과상도 다 보면 이제 제일 상모도 뒤자치고 락치고 가사까지 손은 그저 하마가 다 하고 또 대사적 저 탐지상 저저저 노마사도 너무 대서 그래. 그때 뭐 하지는 뜻이 혼자라도 답을 배상을 하면 계산을 봐. 그 소소라도 쓰는 게되게 그래서 사과들이 터졌고요. 그래서 돈이 냠는 거래. 이 다들 로기야만 되게 가이지 지세요. 뭐서 이 책이 양대 비르된 방고 저기서 이제 말하는 게 와서 저기 이제 와도 드디어 못해서 그래서 소차 차와지 된데 그래서 내가 도저 대야 못해서 선지로도 양대 그 사족선도 쏘고요. 대다들이 쪼든 사족선 줘 하정선이 짜치주되는 기술이란 말이지. 이 대를 빠져 못 치게送요래. 빠져 못 쳐. 냐니 기진진도나 이해랑 나 광셔지. 나 주라가 가이트는 거니 죽어서 이거 냐르되니 다시 쓰는 토고 꼬시게 가서는 토고. 다 서기 약고도 지는데 기술이랑 공동 근데 사람들 냥도 톱소 뜻도 로명하만 볼 소리 들이 이게가 세방 세대 조방 세이점바 대상세대 이거다 탐지를 주세요 거는 들이 때리지 때려선 거를 얘들이 개치치와 수험 쳐보자 야들이 되는 수험 쳐보 탑고 탑대가 들이 지시랑 때리 대 개치보다 로기야만 지시랑 어송 들이 대가 다다다 지시랑 차도를 뭐 지시랑 차도 중심보다 세당당 마제당 노차다 노차르스니 차도 정을 때때리 세당 때때리 마자르 때때리 세당 진짜를 내몸 똑똑 싸웠지 또 차도를 차가 깨지 쳐고 그래 소 중지는 들고 남상들이 매상 보시는 도토고 대다로 좀 지시랑 송
So, Dharma friends, we continue the teachings from yesterday, the 7 branches, and so we next come to the branch of rejoicing, which is the antidote to jealousy. And so here we recognize the faults of jealousy, and so that is actually something that has to be something that has to become really clear in our mind. What's the quality of rejoicing? Because it is often a bit obscure. Because jealousy is a very subtle affliction. We can almost not notice that it's actually there, but it's there. And actually, it is a very powerful force that destroys our merit. For example, Sakya Pandita had said in the words of advice that someone who cultivates an evil intention, a negative thought, like competitive thoughts, that will destroy their merit. The merit becomes exhausted. And so ultimately this kind of competitive or ambitious mind ultimately leads to jealousy. And it always arises in our mind just naturally on an ongoing basis as we are unmindful. Jealousy, competitive mind always kind of lingers there in our mind. And it's related to many of the other afflictions too. So, for example, because of our desire or attachment that ends up in jealousy, kind of dissolves in jealousy. Or when we get angry of an aggression against something that also ends up in jealousy. And also, in the end, it all comes down to ignorance. And ignorance is not knowing the fault of jealousy. So therefore, if you understand the quality of bodhicitta, you will understand the fault of jealousy. When you get jealous and you understand the quality of bodhicitta, you will recognize, now I am losing my bodhicitta. And so if you just think in this way, Dhamma friends, that will be excellent. For example, this is how it is also explained in the 37 Bodhisattva Practices. And it always arises, especially when there's like a peer, someone of kind of similar or lower status than ourselves. If they're just a little bit lower, there's a slight difference in status. There's all kinds of circumstances that always instantly trigger our jealousy. And so, as it is said in the Samantabhadra prayer, in this way, the imprints grow stronger and thicker. So as we develop these small thoughts of jealousy, we place more and more imprints into the mind. And slowly these imprints then increase in the mind, and then it is always ready to arise. For example, when we just hear about like somebody else, we hear somebody say something, or when we say something about others, for example, we naturally go into this direction of kind of raising ourselves in a way, and then putting others down and harming others. So we speak motivated by jealousy. And then because of that, slowly we create a conflict between people. And that's also where the conflict between countries comes about. It comes really from jealousy. And then the ultimate fruition of jealousy is anger, hatred. And then what's the fault of anger? What does anger harm? It harms your love. It destroys your love. And love is your only cause of merit. So here in the text, then it says, so on page 11, it says, so I beseech you, protect us, and so on. And in the end, Rinpoche read. So please, what is it? Oh, sorry. Before that, no, sorry, next one. Yeah.
一切众生皆令成熟之。
exception. So it's related to rejoicing, and so, for example, without exception, every single sentient being, for example, when you see a little tiny animal, they also actually, when you observe them, they possess love. For example, how they take care of their own offspring. And that's also their cause of merit. And that's because they all possess Buddha nature. Because of that, because they possess Buddha nature, just naturally they have a perception of mother and child, and the mother knows how to care for the child with great love. So even a little animal can feel love to some extent, and that's because they possess Buddha nature. And then this is what makes them increase their cause of merit. So the merit increases that in that way, and eventually when it fully matures, then they take again a birth in the higher realms, for example, as a human being that possesses the Dharma. And then gradually, step by step, they are brought to the state of enlightenment, or the path to enlightenment. So sentient beings are liberated gradually. There's this prayer where we say, may I liberate those not liberated. So that means you liberate those sentient beings living in the 3 lower realms into bringing them to the 3 higher realms. And then it says, may I release those not released. And then those who already are born in the higher realms, they're caused to cultivate renunciation. And then the 3rd line says, may I give breath to those without breath. And that means those who already have cultivated renunciation and entered the pratimoksha path, they are gradually established on the path of the bodhisattvas. And so in this way, slowly they increase their merit, and their Buddha nature never becomes spoiled. So gradually the merit, the love will grow stronger and stronger. Because Buddha nature is the wisdom, the intelligence that beings possess, and because that's their inherent nature, it will always cause the slightest love that is present to increase more and more. So because that is what we are, Buddha nature can never give us up, never forsake us. And that is why ultimately all sentient beings go naturally toward the state of enlightenment. That is their nature. And so in the 6 realms of samsara, even in a temporary sense, whatever they do with love, whatever they do with body, speech, and mind that comes from a mind of love is what we call virtuous. And we can see that in the animal realm, for example, how animals care for each other with great love. It's actually, when you look at it, it's quite incredible how a sentient being like an animal, actually, who is a being of great ignorance, still has an ability to care for the others and protect the lives of other animals, for example, with so much love. So it's quite amazing how animals really care for each other. And then everything else too. At the time when you train your mind in a pure view, then everything that is beneficial is really a great merit. So, for example, even the benefit that is caused by the 5 elements and so on. And so, for example, in the case of a mother caring for her child, in an ordinary samsaric sense, actually by caring for the child, the mother perfectly practices the 6 paramitas. So the 6 paramitas are complete within her caring for the child. But then the 6th paramita, the paramita of wisdom, what happens to that in an ordinary context? It becomes the self. So the mother thinks it's my child. and then she's attached to her child and naturally has an aversion against others. So for example, when her child fights with another child, then she will of course take the side of her child and protect her child and blame the other child. So this is how it is in samsara. And so also, because wisdom has become the self, the mother or ordinary beings don't recognize that they're actually practicing the paramitas. Actually, that is a great virtue, but they don't recognize it. And so that is just like, for example, if you give a lot of money to a little child, they will likely just waste that money. So therefore, it's better to put the money in the bank, and so you also draw an interest then from that. So you gradually increase your virtue. First, you have to understand the quality of love, and then understanding that, you rejoice. In the Vajrakilaya practice, in a dedication, it says that through transforming and completion or perfection, transforming and perfecting all the virtues accumulated by myself and all others, may the ultimate or the authentic, ultimate pure state be attained. So it speaks about transformation and perfection. So we take this virtue of bodhicitta that we have, and there's also another prayer where we say, may all of these virtues become the cause of bodhicitta. So we transform everything into becoming the cause of bodhicitta, which then ultimately becomes the cause of enlightenment. So think of it in this way. So you don't think that there's all these kind of separate virtues, but you bring them all to mind. We all have the same, all beings, of self and others. So our mind is the same, our afflictive emotions are one and the same, our love is one and the same. So recognize that, for example, the love between friends, or that a love that you have for an animal, for example. Remember just the quality of love, and when you know the quality of love, then you will rejoice. So for example, when you see there are two friends who are really harmonious, then if you rejoice, you would think that this is incredible, this is so good. And in the end, may this turn into the cause of enlightenment. May this become bodhicitta. May their love become bodhicitta. So think in this way and cultivate such an aspiration. And in this way, bodhicitta is always sustained. And also in the context of practicing Mahamudra, from the perspective of the ultimate truth, it is said, there is one quote by the Dakini Niguma, and she said that you must nurture the fire spark of awareness over and over again, so it grows into a greater fire. And so first you have a very small feeling of love, but then when you habituate to that over and over again, by understanding its qualities, it will increase. So in this way, you must know how to increase your love. And so you do that by observing beings, like for example, animals, and so on, and rejoicing in any slight virtue that you observe. Because actually there is so much virtue, so much merit that is actually being created all the time. It's just that beings don't know that. For example, even animals create many causes of merit, but they don't recognize that as merit. For example, like a business person who owns a store, it depends on their motivation. They have a great opportunity to accumulate merit by doing their business if they think that whatever I do here may it be of benefit to others. Then actually when they recognize that this is a way to accumulate merit, then this intention becomes bodhicitta. But then mostly people don't know that there is an opportunity for merit, and they just think about themselves, for example, thinking about improving their shop and so on. So this can also become a cause of merit if, for the future, if it is seen with a motivation of bodhicitta. For example, this is also said in the Prayer for Excellent Conduct. It says that It is a greater merit to join one's palms in faith and cultivate an altruistic mind for just a single moment than it is to make offerings to all the Buddhas of jewels that fill up the entire universe. So it's a greater merit to cultivate an altruistic mind and faith just once. So when you rejoice with an altruistic mind, then the virtue of self and others of the 3 times becomes extremely vast and powerful. And the root of that is to recognize that merit is all over the place. There's merit everywhere. It just needs to be recognized. And when you recognize it, it becomes the cause of turning into bodhicitta. Then your good intention becomes bodhicitta. So this is also how it is said in a different dedication prayer. Like may all the merit accumulated by self and others turn into the cause of enlightenment through bodhicitta. So this is similar to putting your money into a bank where you draw an interest. So it increases. In this way, your love increases. And the benefit is obtained by not just yourself, but both self and others. So think about these lines of rejoicing here again and again. So you rejoice in all the virtues of all beings. For example, when you give a bit of somebody makes an offering to a beggar, for example, who is begging, and then you rejoice in that and think this is so good, it's so excellent. Or if you see an animal, how they care for each other, then you rejoice in that and think that now they have found some happiness. Like, for example, they have found food and so on. So rejoice in this way over and over again whenever you see anything, and it really is all over the place. There's always a way to accumulate a merit by rejoicing. So actually, the most important friend or companion of bodhicitta is rejoicing. And then Patul Rinpoche had said, if you want to accumulate merit while sleeping or lying down, then you should rejoice in the merit of others. So if you feel that I just want to have a good time and lie around, but I actually still want to accumulate merit, how can I do that? Then in that case, you should rejoice in the merit of others. Because this is how you will naturally receive merit. You will receive the same merit than the other person that you're rejoicing in. So there's actually many instructions on that in the sutras, the scriptures, and so on. So when you rejoice, you bring to mind any virtue that has been created in the past, or even that will be created in the future, and that is being created right now. You bring it all to mind. And this is really a way to accumulate great merit, great virtue, even while lying down and doing nothing. So that's why rejoicing is extremely important. And so rejoicing is an antidote to jealousy. So remember the great fault of jealousy again and again. So from how jealousy develops is that there is attachment, and it develops into jealousy and pride, and then that turns into hatred or anger. So it's important to recognize jealousy when it starts to form, because it is a very subtle feeling, and the very subtle feeling needs to be recognized immediately. And this recognition is just like fire burning wood. This is how you need to liberate jealousy as it arises. So that's the main point on rejoicing.
诸位法友，那我们就继续昨天讲的这个色康玛密咒7支供养的讲解。那昨天讲到随喜，随喜其实是对自己嫉妒心很好的一个方法。我们要了解到嫉妒心的这个过患，那我们在心理中内心里面应该要弄得清清楚楚。我们知道这个了解到嫉妒心的过患为何，因为嫉妒心本身是一个比较隐晦的一种感觉觉受，那不太容易见，那它是一个很有威力的这个的一个烦恼，可以让我们这个破坏我们自己的这个功德。那么在萨迦班智达过去也讲说，我们要长养我们这个有的嫉妒心的时候，我们要长养长养自己的这个野心跟那个骄慢之心而来的这种，当我们这个生的这个骄慢心、嫉妒心、野心的时候，就变成了嫉妒心。那么这个嫉妒心是会摧毁我们自己的功德的，他是这样讲的。所以呢，当我们这种嫉妒的这种心情呢，常常会留在我们的内心里面，因为我们的这个欲望也好、执着也好，而产生的嫉妒心。然后呢，同时我们的嗔心跟这个攻击性也会转化成这个嫉妒心。那它根本是来自于我们自己的无明，只是因为我们不知道嫉妒心的这种过患。如果说我们要知道，如果我们自己有菩提心的话，那我们就知道能够了解说嫉妒心的过患是什么，了知说当我们嫉妒心升起的时候，那时候我们正在失去我们的菩提心，能够有这样子的觉知是很好的。37颂里也有这样子讲的。那么对于我们这个地位不如我们的人，有的时候他们所作所行会引发我们的这个嫉妒心。在那个普贤王如来祈愿文也有讲到，这个嫉妒心呢，欲知毁他众生业，妒心争斗争长义，这个是很不好的一个情况。那么这个我们要这个好好的这个警惕自己。那么或者是说平常我们所做的自赞毁他，那么彼此就容易产生冲突，与周围的这个人之间的问题也这个甚至国与国之间的问题也常常是来自于彼此的嫉妒心而引发成的不同的这个征战。那么所以当我们这样子有个嫉妒心的时候呢，我们又容易升起我们的嗔心，嗔心的升起的话就会容易失去我们的慈爱心，那当然这个接下来就是失去我们的功德了。那我们要知道众生没有任何的例外，甚至是很小的这个生物动物，他们都有慈爱心，他们都知道如何来照顾下一代，这个就是他们可以累积功德的一个方法。那么因为这所有的众生都有佛性，包括这些小动物小生物一样，这个母子之间的关系，那母亲自然而然知道如何用慈爱心来照顾他们的下一代，因为他们有佛性，所以这样子做能够增加他们的功德。那这个当他们的因缘成熟的时候，他们自然就能够受生善道，听闻佛法，渐渐修行成长，知道正悟。所以我们有讲过说，解脱那些那个未解脱者，那就是把这个下三道的众生带往三善道。那解离那些没有解离者，那么让他们能够解放，就是三善道的众生能够让他们生出出离心，那些没有这个气息的，没有办法呼吸的，给予他们气息。那这个呢，就说已经升起出离心的呢，能够让他们走向菩萨道。所以我们要慢慢增长我们的功德，因为我们的佛性是不变的，让我们的慈爱心增长。那佛性是内在本有的这种智慧，我们可以继续增长，一切的众生往这个正悟的方向而走，从我们的身语意里面生出我们的这个慈爱心，而长养出这个功德。那么有的时候动物之间彼此的这个慈爱心呢是不可思议的，他们相互的照顾，相互的保护，甚至比人做的还多。 所以我说身为人道的我们应该要训练自己的这个静观，观到一切善行一切有利都是能够随喜的。比如说母亲来照顾下一代，那么这个就是母亲已经圆满她这个六度波罗蜜的这个修持了。但是当我们所谓的智慧或者是般若的时候，因为有的时候众生的这个我执我念有一个我的这个概念出来，就会就说这个对于他们的这个功德就有所损坏的。比如说只会这个对自己的自己的人或者自己所拥有物有一种执着，然后对别人或别人的东西有一种敌意，比如说自己的小孩跟别人家的小孩打架，自然对对方的小孩别人的小孩也生出敌意，这种就是这个我们自己的执着。那这个因这种执着呢，容易导致这个轮回。所以当我们讲说要般若或者是说智慧的时候，如果说当我们生出我执，就是对事物就不能了知其本实相。那事实上呢，这个原来是我们随时都可以在造这个六度波罗蜜的善业，只是我们不知道而已。那就像给小孩子钱一样，这个他也不会用，不会好好的这个保管或者是说投资，那他们给的钱也算是浪费，不如你就放在银行还可以生利息。所以我们要了知慈爱心的这个功德能够做回向，在普巴金刚的法本回向也有提到类似的讲法，就是愿我自他这个能够转化并圆满自他的这个功德回向就近的清正这个就近清净正悟之地。那这就是菩提心，愿一切这个善都成为菩提心的这个因，这个也有这样子的祈愿文。那甚至到就近的这个正悟，这些并不是说各个分别的这个功德，我们要知道我们的心、我们的烦恼、我们的慈爱心都是跟众生一样等同的。那么朋友之间、动物之间都有慈爱心，如果我们能够了解慈爱心的这个功德，就能够对看到这种善行就能够升起随喜之心。两人之间的和谐，那我们看到两人之间朋友有伴侣之间两个人之间很和谐，这是非常很好的，这也可以回向。我们可以回向愿他们彼此之间的慈爱心能够成为菩提心增长之因。那过去那个圆导一位这个祖师也跟尼姑妈讲说，你要长养我们这个明觉的这个心。那这个明觉的心就好像一个非常小的星星之火，那它可以转化成，如果我们继续去长养去培养的话，它可以变成一个熊熊大火，就很像智慧一般。所以我们要慢慢的长养我们自己的慈爱心，观察动物之间的慈爱心，并且能够时时随喜。我们应该了解，这个是我们是有时时可以造许多功德的这个情况跟条件的，只是我们不知道而已。那比如说有一个商人开了一家店，他事实上可以随时累积功德的。比如说他如果能够发愿我所做的一切都能够利益众生，这就是一个菩提心的显现。那他这样子就可以随时累积功德，只是一般人不知道这样子，然后只想到改善自己的店，而没想到如何来利益众生。所以我们一切所行应该再加上这个菩提心。那么也有这个祈愿文讲到说，如果说一瞬间能够自心合十祈请回向，那他功德大过供养三世诸佛珍宝。这主要就是来根源自这个利他心。我们要知道30的这个菩提心都是可以这个长养功德回向的，因为我们要知道处处有功德。如果说我们能够了知他的这个这些状况的话，那么我们就可以当我们这个功德升起的时候，那见到一切都能够回向，并把它转化成这种菩提心。愿 自他所有一切善，能够透过菩提心的增长而行政务之事，如同这就如同把钱放在银行里面，钱只会增长。这是一种自利利他的行为。对于这一点，我们应该要反思思维，随时随地随喜自己或他人的这个功德。那么当看到别人把钱给这个弃食的乞丐的时候，我们也要能够升起随喜的心，知道内心能够想到说能够这样子是很好，他们有的吃也能够随喜他们。那么所以呢，这些功德随喜呢是时时可做，处处可修的。那么在巴图仁波切也有提到过这样子的讲法，就是如果说你要睡觉的时候也能够累积功德福德的话，那么你可以做的就是随喜他人。这样子的话，我们可以得到，当我们随喜别人的时候，我们自然可以得到别人相同的这个功德。那么在这一方面也有很多类似的这个法教，所以当我们随喜的时候，这个过去现在未来的这个功德，我们可以累积，时时可以累积很多的功德，甚至没有具体做什么事，因为我们的随喜也可以累积很多的功德，这样是可以的。那随喜这个主要对峙的是我们的嫉妒心跟我们贪着心，因为我们的贪着心升起的嫉妒心，然后升起的自己的骄慢心，而转化成嗔恨心。所以我们应该了解，嫉妒心它本身是比较微细的一种烦恼。那我们要培养我们的正明觉之心，那在我们这个嫉妒心这种烦恼升起的时候，马上就了知，那么就能够转化它。这样子就好像当把它这个烦恼就好像木头一样，放到我们那个非常清明的明觉之心的这个熊之火，就可以把它烧掉。所以在这边这一季就提到说时时随喜的重要性。
Next is the antidote to ignorance, which is to request to turn the wheel of Dharma.
也就是说能够请转法轮。
It is being ignorant, being ignorant of the cause of what actually causes happiness and what causes suffering. And so being ignorant of the causes of happiness and suffering, although we want to be happy, we strive for happiness, we really create only suffering by doing that. So that is what samsaric sentient beings do. That's what we call ignorance. So ignorance in brief means that although we want to be happy, we really we strive after suffering. And as an antidote to that, we request to turn the wheel of Dharma. Because the meaning of Dharma is to transform, a transformation. We transform the mind. The first teaching of the Buddha was completely tame your own mind. What do we need to tame? We need to ultimately tame the dualistic grasping. On the relative level, first we need to tame self-grasping through the altruistic mind. And there are various methods to tame the mind, but basically there is the twofold truth, the relative and the ultimate. And on the relative level, we tame self-grasping through love and compassion, the altruistic mind. And on the ultimate level, we must tame the dualistic grasping of perception. And so in order to learn, to receive the methods to do so, we request the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma. So, for example, in this world, we think that this is the place where the Buddha Shakyamuni has appeared to teach the Dharma, and he's just here, he's only here in this world. So he's our Buddha here. But it's actually not as linear as that. Actually, it's almost like a reflection of him appears in thousands of different universes at the same time. It's like when you see holographic. So and there are, for example, when Indra requested to turn the wheel of Dharma of the Buddha, and then the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma. Then there are like thousands of these Indras appearing in thousands of different universes all at the same time. It is just like a facet of a crystal that like reflects in many different ways, but reflecting the same thing. This, for example, is said in a commentary on Gongji Baekju Gidapa. And so, for example, scientists show us that too, how there's a mirror-like reflection of one and the same thing that appears on like many different mirrors, for example. So when you project outward, you see all these different images, but actually when you go back to the source, they are one and the same thing, just appearing all over the place. And the basis is one and the same, and the basis is wisdom. And then compassion arises from wisdom. So the Buddha appeared in this way and taught the Dharma in many world systems. So here it says, I rejoice in all the victorious ones of the 3 times and also the 10 directions. So this is here speaking about the endless qualities of all the Buddhas. And then it says, so the construction is a bit different in Tibetan, but basically it says, all sentient beings without exception rejoice in their virtue. So now coming to the qualities of those superior ones, so in brief, the quality is that they are free of all obscuration, they're free of all fault, and they possess all perfect qualities. So what is a fault that they're free of? Fault is even the most subtle thought or cause of suffering. It is the subtle thought that creates suffering, including all the imprints. So that's the fault that they are free of, and they possess perfect qualities. They possess perfect causes for happiness. So basically what we call a fault is something that causes suffering. What we call a good quality is something virtuous that causes happiness. So all those sentient, here bringing to mind all the virtue of all those sentient beings. So similarly, the fault of all sentient beings is that they grasp at a self for as long as their mind is not matured. Then ultimately when the mind matures, it matures into non-dual primordial awareness. And when the mind is in a matured state, ripened state, that is what we call a Buddha. So the way we ripen the mind is first through the relative truth. And so we need the relative truth, and therefore we must request the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma, but actually the Buddhas turn the wheel of Dharma all the time continuously. And all that Dharma, all these Dharma teachings are methods to mature, to ripen our mind into Buddhahood. The Buddha taught 84,000 different teachings, and each of them can be divided into another 84,000. There's limitless teachings that were taught in thousands of different universes. So you have to broaden your mind this way and think that it's not just here in this world, there is just limitless worlds. So when you expand outward, when you look outward, there's this billion-fold universe. And then when you kind of gather it back, then it all comes down to only the mind. So that is also what we call sending out, radiating out, and gathering back. So we radiate out, or we project out, and have some understanding of, at least a fractional understanding of the extent of the universe. But then what we don't usually understand is the gathering back part. So when we gathering back means to see the nature of your mind, to see that the mind is Buddha. In the 37 practices, it says, appearances are one's own mind. So we have not really recognized that our mind as it is actually in the Buddha. So when you realize the nature of the mind, that is the gathering back. When you gather back, you realize the nature of the mind. When you send out, you radiate out, then the mind becomes limitless. There are these limitless beings in the 6 realms of samsara, and there's just incalculable sentient beings. And then when you gather back all of that into its essence, it comes down to the mind. And now there is self-grasping in the mind, and self-grasping matures when you cultivate an altruistic mind, which is just like melting an ice block, so it melts to be one with the ocean water.
Uh,
那么我们对这个无明对治无明的方法，就是要勤转法轮那么无明，什么是无明呢？我们只是不知道这个乐的因跟苦的因。那么虽然我们想要追求快乐，但是恰恰所做的恰恰是让自己受苦轮回的事情。所以对治的方法又是我们要这个勤转法轮。我们知道佛法是能够转换我们自己的内心的。一开始佛陀也讲说自净其意，这个所净化就是我们二元执着的这种对立的这种执着，因为我们要知道说这个是烦恼的根源。那么我们这个烦恼呢是可以透过我们众生的这个慈悲心来个降服对治的。那么这个我们这个知道的这个自己这个二元对立的这种执着呢，它对治的方法就是要修习那个佛法。那么这个我们讲到说世尊是在这个世界，但是并不是说世尊只是在这一个世界出现，它是随时随地在千万个世界都出现，就好像一个 hologram 一个全息的这个全信息的这个图案一样。比如说梵天来跟这个世尊来请法，事实上千万的梵天同时住在千万的世界在请法的。所以在这个Bodhisattva 他对这个共其正法一义的解释有提到说一切就如同镜像的这个显现。那如果我们看它的根源的话，它们是等同的平等的，那根本就是所谓的智慧，有了智慧而能生出这个悲心。那么佛在这个地方给予我们法教，那佛陀有无尽的功德，因为它是来自于诸佛利他心所生是在利他心而生起来的。那么他们是免于一切的这个过患，能够增长他们的功德。那么我们知道这个一切的这个苦因，即使是很微细的苦，那如果说即使它是很微细的苦，它就是苦的根源，也会阻断我们的这个安乐的。所以我们知道众生的这个过患是来自于因为我们有我执，内心的不成熟。如果说我们心是成熟的话，我们就回归我们无二的这个本初智。那到底如何才能够让自己的心是成熟呢？就是首先在相对地来讲，我们就请佛转法轮。那事实上佛陀是无时无刻不在转法轮的。那这主要是让我们心绪的这个种子能够成熟，佛性在我们真心中成熟。那么这佛陀教导我们帮了世间法门的用意也在这里，那能够让我们扩大我们自己的心量、心眼界。那不只是说在这个世界，那有许多除了这个世界之外，在法界里面有许许多多的其他的他方的这个世界。所以我们扩大我们的心量，把这种心量能够送出去，然后送到这个宇宙，这到法界无数的这个刹土去，然后再回射。那回射的时候呢，就是什么叫做回射？就是回归自心，见到自己心性的这个特质。所以我们放光是利众，回射就是回归到我们心的这个本性。那佛子行37颂有讲到，诸所显现为自心。 这个应该是第22季，对，第22季吧。那我们众生的，因为有这个我们的这个无明而就不知道这么即心即佛的这个道理，所以呢，我们而有的我执，所以我们透过这个心性的这个成熟，我执就可以转化成这个利他心，那就像海水中上面的这个冰块呢，它就融化跟海水合为一的这种情况。所以呢，这个寄送怙主您于十方世界中，请以妙音支分海会音，遍转无垢殊胜法轮已，一切众生皆令成熟之。这就是请转法轮。니들 저는 다 나가는 탈, 이 다기기스 매받는 때 탈고 그래. 대회는 때 하장들이 사줘서 다디지 인핑을 놓고 탈고 인핑을 놓고 하장냐 타고 지차로 차. 진중마들이 진중마 같이잖아. 다디는 이모가 치라도 don네들이 이모가 치마시. 이 인핑을 놓고 차로 놓고 그래. 대회들이 다 주지 주시 받을 때 대략들이지 주진이었다 와서 주님 정도 돌아서 버치는 그래서 주중 그런다면은 이 사제 좀 되게 송미들이 적진 감도 똥다 되더니 내는 도저히 강시에 맞지 강 똥사 먹어 주중 홀로 꼴다 꼴지 말아야 된다 대다들이 그래지
So there are different ways of different views, different things, the way one can view existence. So, like broadly speaking, we say that there is a view of like phenomena, like the objects, kind of a materialistic view, and then there's the view of dharmata, which means the view that views the nature of those phenomena. And so then we also speak about there is the view of the holy dharma, and there is the view of the worldly ways of the human beings in this world, for instance. And that would be the materialistic view that views phenomena. And one time I asked a question to Khenpo Sherab, and he said that about that, and in response he said that he heard through a teaching by Jim Mepam Rinpoche that there are three views. And there is the view that views objects, which is the material world, and then there is the view that views the essential nature of these phenomena of dharmata, and then there is the view that views one's own self, one's own awareness. So there's the view of self-awareness. So the first view that views outer phenomena, the material world, is the samsaric view. And the second view that views the nature of these phenomena is the view that leads to the state of liberation. And then ultimately, the ultimate view is to view your own awareness viewing itself. So that is more on an individual basis, someone who has realized the nature of their mind. Then also Jigten Sumgyön had said that the three Dharma wheels taught by the Buddha were taught due to there being a difference in the retinue's realization. So because the retinue, the disciples, possessed different mental capacities, Buddha gave different teachings, 3 levels of teachings. So actually there are some teachings that the scholars always give on that more elaborately. Also Miller Repa, he spoke about this view that views phenomena and the view that views the nature of phenomena, and also it is mentioned actually in essence in the 37 Bodhisattva Practices. In the very beginning it starts with an homage to Chenrezig, where it says, "You have realized that phenomena neither come nor go." So Chenrezig and all the other noble superior beings, they have realized that phenomena neither come nor go. So they hold the view that views the true nature, the dharmata, the reality of those phenomena. And then the verse continues, even though they have seen that phenomena neither come nor go, they strive single-pointedly for the sake of sentient beings. Sentient beings have not realized that, and that is why sentient beings always go around. And where do they go around? In the 6 realms of samsara. What makes the difference between realizing there's no coming and no going and going around in circles is whether or not one has realized the mind or the view. And ultimately, the mind is empty like space. The Dharmakaya, within the Dharmakaya, there's no duality between samsara and nirvana, although they are limitless phenomena. They are pervaded by the space like Dharmakaya, and therefore phenomena neither come nor go. But those beings who haven't realized that view just the individual phenomena, and therefore they see the 6 realms of samsara. But because they possess Buddha nature, which is their inherent wisdom, through the power of their inherent Buddha nature, they all do possess some wisdom and compassion, at least to some extent. And that will always lead to birth in the 3 higher realms. And then again, the mind degenerates, and we develop the 3 poisons, the afflictive emotions. And so for the most part, beings wander in the 6 realms of samsara, in the lower realms mainly. So sometimes they develop slight moments of love, and due to this very subtle karma of love, they sometimes take birth in the higher realms, the 3 higher realms, but it's actually extremely rare. It is as rare as there are stars in a day sky. It's very rare. For the most part, beings continuously keep wandering in the 3 lower realms. That is why we always say it is so difficult to find a precious human body. And so we learn that by reflecting on its causes, on numbers and illustrations. That is how we learn how rare a precious human existence is. When we just look around in this world, we can understand that. Or when we think about how many other sentient beings there are, we can understand that. And so, anyways, these are those 3 views: the view that views the material phenomena, and then the view that views their true nature, and then the view that sees its own nature, so the self-knowing view. And this is all according to the Buddha's teachings. So the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, that's really the essence of the Dharma. And so now we are in the human world, and actually the human world is said to be a Nirmanakaya Pure Land, even though we do have happiness and suffering here. So here we are requesting the Buddha in our human world to turn the wheel of Dharma. And this wheel, also this was the Dharma, and now the wheel means that something that's turning. So just like the 6 realms of samsara is actually like a turning wheel. Like continuously beings go around in circles over and over again, just like a wheel constantly turning. And so that is why also the Buddha turns this in unceasing wheel of Dharma. So the Buddha taught that in essence, the view of what is the view of the outer world in a material sense, and what is the view of their nature and the self-knowing view. So whichever view you hold, you can just know for yourself. But so someone who holds the materialistic view that views all outer phenomena will be someone who believes in the true existence of appearances, who grasps at the true existence of appearances, and their concepts and the existence of self and others as separate. And so for as long as we hold this ordinary view, it is extremely difficult to ever become liberated as long as this view is in place. There are not many people who hold the ultimate view, which is the view that sees the true nature of phenomena. There are maybe as many as there are stars in a day sky. There's only very few. But Milarepa, for instance, has seen the view on the ultimate level of the view of Dharmata, and so he said that I do not see outer phenomena, I only see their true nature. So once you realize that, the true nature of phenomena, then next you realize, as Milarepa said, I do not see consciousness, I only see primordial wisdom. Because when you see things as they really are, then you do no longer see as self. So there can't be self-grasping. That's the ordinary consciousness. It's the self-grasping consciousness. So when you see how things really are, you see that there is no self. The self, actually, the so-called self, is all Dharmakaya. The basis of mind is the space like Dharmakaya. And there is nothing whatsoever in samsara and nirvana that goes beyond this expanse of the Dharmakaya, even though there are limitless sentient beings. But if you see that, then third, Milarepa said, I see no sentient beings, I only see Buddhas. Sentient beings are just like temporary ice blocks floating on the ocean water, but there are no real sentient beings. So this is the meaning of Dharma and wheel, so requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma, and this is how the wheel keeps turning in samsara. So as we said, sometimes due to a slight virtue we practice, we take birth in the 3 higher realms. And then again, because in the higher realms, for the most part, what we do is non-virtues, we again go down to the lower realms. So in this way, we are never liberated. We turn like the wheel of a car, like an engine, constantly turning. Or for example, like a fly that is stuck in a closed jar. Sometimes it flies up, sometimes in the lower parts, but it always flies around in circles in this way. So this is how we will never find liberation. So what is liberation? Liberation means to become liberated from dualistic grasping. First, we must liberate the self, the self-grasping, and then we liberate the dualistic perception of self and other. And we liberate dualistic grasping through bodhicitta, through the altruistic mind. We have an altruistic mind, but it is extremely weak. It is a very small spark of altruism. Especially now that we are in the degenerate age, the more the degenerate age progresses, the worse it gets in terms of our afflictions. The afflictions become increasingly coarse, the self-grasping becomes increasingly strong, and the attachment, the grasping to this concrete reality becomes increasingly strong, and the virtuous thoughts, an altruistic mind, becomes weaker and weaker, more and more subtle as the generation progresses. So in order to become liberated from this ordinary view of viewing the material phenomena, we are introduced to the ultimate view of the nature of phenomena, and this is the purpose of the Buddha Dharma. And so the Buddha himself had said that it is for this sake that I have taught thousands and countless of sutras and Dharma teachings, have turned the wheel of Dharma limitlessly in thousands of different worlds.
父主，您于十方世界中，请以妙音分海，遍音支分海会音， 遍转无垢殊胜法轮已，一切众生皆令成熟之。那么这个我们在这个世界上有不同层次的见地来看自己存在的这个现象，看在这个世间的这个物质的层面的这种现象观察，对自己法性的这个理解。那么我对于这点我曾经问了天婆的 Cheryl， 那他提到的那个怙仁波切的讲法就是这种三种这个见地。这个第一个层次是一种对外在物质的以知其为实的这种见地，这是导致我们轮回的这种见地。那么我们去看第二个层次，就是看现象的这个本性，这个就是看它的法性，那这个是帮助我们得到解脱的这个见地。那第三个层次就是自我的觉性，这个是究竟的这个见地。那在我们这个修持应该要了解这个心性的这个本质。吉田松公祖师在提到佛陀三转法轮的这个内容的不同呢，是因为这个因应这个眷属，也就是当时佛陀的弟子的这个根性而给的。那么有一些学者常常把这为什么这个佛陀三转法轮的这个原因这个给忘掉了。那么在佛子行三十一中一开始就是礼敬这个观世音菩萨，因为他虽知诸法无来去，唯一尽行利众生。他虽然知道法性是无来无去的，但是为了以利益众生而行种种的善，引导这个众生，但是众生不知道而继续在六道中轮回。那么如果说我们如果知道这个诸法这个法性是无来无去的，跟这个流转我们六道的这个心事的不同，是在我们是否能够真正了解我们自己的心性。我们知道心性的本质是如同虚空一样，那轮回跟涅槃在本质上没有什么不同，这个现象这个本质是没有来去的。但因为那个我们自己众生具有本来就有的这个佛性，又有一个能够升起的悲心而能够受生到善道。但是呢，我们也因为我们的三毒烦恼而在这个恶道中受生受苦。那么因为我们这个所累积的这个业力，然后或者是有这个暂时能够受生善趣，但是毕竟是少的。那大部分的众生在一个这个一辈子之后呢，都是受生到恶道的。我们如果说看到这个世界上的一些事情，我们可以知道说它如何来这个运行的。现在的人道或者是说化身净土，因为具有是苦乐常伴的，在这个地方我们也要去做的是勤转法轮。那个轮子法就好像轮子一样，随时这个旋转。法轮常在，所以呢，我们要从外在的执外在为实的这种见地，一直往内，然后到的这个自明的这种见地，这样子一步一步的来改。那么我们这个在这个弥勒巴祖师有讲说，如果说我们一般人很难够修行人很难能够证悟，很少有人能够证到究竟的这个见地，这个数量之少，就好像在白天看到天空上的这个星星一样的这个虚少跟不寻常，这都是因为我执的关系。那么那么这个众生就好像在海上漂浮的这个冰块，那么这个弥勒日巴祖师知道说，虽然是冰块，但是他心性的本质就像海水一样，所以他才能够讲说，我不见众生，只见佛陀。 所以我们在这个请转法轮这一个方向呢，就如何在这个在轮回的当中能够继续转法轮，是因为我们行善能够受生到善道，却因为受生之后呢，再继续造恶，然后再继续轮回，所以这也是一种流转，这是不得止息的一种轮回的这种流转。所以我们如果能够解脱的话，主要是要解脱我们自己的这个执着。第一步骤就是去掉我的我执，以及对二元对立的这个执着来修持这个利他心。那即使很小很小的利他心，我们都要继续来尽量来培养，来长养那个利他心，然后呢让它能够慢慢增长，然后为了能够让这个众生能够在凡夫见中那个成熟有的这个佛法来，所以以此之故，我们要在逐渐能够在这个祈请转佛陀能够转法轮，在无量的世界中能够继续转法轮，让我们的心识能够慢慢的这个成熟。
So it says, please ripen all sentient beings without exception.
一切众生皆令
limitless
成熟
sentient
之。
beings in limitless different world systems. So the outer universe and the inner sentient beings are limitless. So how can they mature? How can they be ripened? And why is it that they are unripened? What is it that ripens them? So this is what we need to reflect on here. And so look at the universe and all sentient beings. There's no need to think about anything else. So the universe is endless. There are limitless beings in the universe. But for example, look at a tiny little insect, like a little animal, and look at your own body, a more coarse body, a larger body. Then if you look at the body, it's actually one and the same. The body is composed of the 5 elements, and the body is a microcosm, like an example of the outer universe. And the mind is an example, or like the microcosm of the mind of all sentient beings. The outer universe, comprised of the 5 elements, is consisting of compounded phenomena, and therefore impermanent by nature. Therefore, like a heap of dust. So we speak about those heaps, the aggregates. The Buddha taught on the 5 aggregates. We possess the 5 aggregates which need to ripen. So we think when we look at our body, there's this this solid thing, but it's not. It's just a heap of different aggregates, temporarily giving you the appearance of there being an I, a self. So, for example, the inner mind would be the aggregate of the consciousness. So the scholars and so on, they explain the 5 aggregates more elaborately. But so when you look at the outer world and your body, your inner body, they have the same nature, composed of the 5 elements and ultimately turning into dust. When you read the Heart Sutra, for example, just a single time, you can really see what is meant by that. How the outer universe is just a pile of dust, and how the inner body is actually an example of it, like a microcosm of it. It is a compounded phenomenon and impermanent, and only appears that way temporarily. So if you understand that, for example, this is what you learn in the Ngundro, the preliminary practices, then the mind relaxes somewhat, and you will not fiercely and solidly cling to the true existence of appearances. And so then what about the inner mind, the maturing or the ripening of the inner mind? The inner mind ripens into the Buddha when it is completely matured. So on the outer level, we must understand, the inner mind must understand that the empty nature of the outer world. So no, we think that this universe that we perceive, that's the real universe. And for example, a dream universe, a dream world is not real. but it's actually one and the same thing. The dream world or your so-called real world is all compounded phenomena that are impermanent by nature. So reflect on that each and every day, the dreams that you have and the world you perceive in the waking state. Is there really a difference or not? There really is no difference whatsoever. Later, when you have died, it will all become the same. The Milarepa actually said you must practice realizing that there is no difference between the waking state and the dream state. In the dream state, for instance, you're creating an entire world, and there is really no difference between that dream world and the world you perceive when you are awake. And for as long as you have not separated from this physical body, you will continue to perceive this world as real. You will hold it to be true. But it is just as real as your dream world. And later, after you have died, the body doesn't go, but the consciousness continues to go on. And that is really where a practice is really crucial. At that point, when the consciousness leaves through the central channel and leaves the body behind, it is essential to here recognize, know the nature of the mind. If one doesn't know the nature of the mind at this point, it will only get worse and worse. So how we mature is through recognizing that the entire outer universe, composed of the 5 elements, is a divine, boundless palace inhabited by the deities. All the deity or the sentient beings are deities. The elements are the 5 dakinis and so on. And then inside of our mind, we have the 5 afflictive emotions. And when they mature into the 5 wisdoms, as is explained very clearly in the Samantabhadra prayer. It explains that very clearly. That's why I always tell you, read this Samantabhadra prayer. We should always read it, because it explains clearly how maturing occurs. So as we mentioned the other day, what is primordial wisdom? And what's the difference between that and consciousness? But in brief, when the dualistic consciousness ripens into primordial wisdom, and then naturally the universe and all sentient beings ripen or mature along with your own maturing. And that is liberation. So what we call liberation is liberation from suffering. And whether or not we suffer depends on whether or not we have matured the mind. So if you do not want to suffer, you have to ripen and mature the mind, make an effort in practice so as to mature the mind and realize the space-like nature of the mind. In the Samantabhadra prayer, it is said, even if the 3 worlds were to be destroyed, there is no fear. There is no attachment to the 5 desirables of the senses. So this is when one realizes this, the ordinary mind transforms into the Buddha mind. Or it is like Milarepa had said, I do not see consciousness, I see primordial wisdom. That primordial wisdom is Buddha. So when you look at the mind, with knowing that, when you then look at your mind, you recognize Mahamudra, according to how it is described in the scriptures, the various teachings. And in there it is explained that the ultimate Buddhist view, the state of mind, the nature of the mind, dispels both extremist views of eternalism and nihilism, because the empty essence of the mind dispels the flaw of eternalism, and the natural clarity of the mind dispels the flaw of nihilism. So that's the special quality of the Buddhist view. Dispels all faults of both extremes. So if you really think about it, if you really reflect on that, you will be free of any doubt regarding that. Actually, we are just creating our own doubts about things. There's actually nothing to doubt in the way the Buddha described how we ripen our mind. It's just we are fabricating our own doubts. So again, what is to be liberated? Liberation means to become free from suffering. So if you understand this, then you understand also what is meant here with how the mind can mature, or please ripen all sentient beings.
这啦，他你没去办的了，这他做不办了，他没那个你错开的了，这了这里。
那么这个众生是无量的，世界是无量的，在外在的七世间跟内在的有情众生都是无量的。那这些众生是如何外在跟内在是如何这个成熟的呢？那如何是不成熟的？那我们这个能够见到这个宇宙中的这个众生是无量的，小至昆虫，大如我们的这个身体呢，我们只以为实的，但是实际上呢，我们这个身体都是由五大元素所组成的。那外在的这个气世间就如同是外在气世间宇宙的这个缩影。那外在是这样子，那内在我们的心呢，它本质跟众生的心也是等同的。这些外相呢，都是众缘的和，它都有无常的这个本质。说穿了就是一堆灰尘的累积在一起，都是由五蕴所组成的。所以当我们能够这样子能够来看，这个身体呢，好像有一个具象的一个身体，但是本来就是它是一堆灰尘组合的。那外在的气世间呢，内在的这种心呢，都有五大。那这个究竟呢是天是回归空的，在心经里面也有这样子的讲法。所以我们要知道说，外在的世界就是一堆灰尘，那内在的这心也是这个众缘的这个和，这个也是我们常常在这个前行释迦行所讲到的。那我们对这点能够了知之后呢，我们这一心就可以放松，就不会去执着外在的现象为实相的。那我们内心是要如何成佛呢？能够如何成熟？我们成熟了之后就可以就近成佛了。所以这个凡夫把这个世界看成是真实的，那这个我们要知道这个我们应该把这个实际上我们要把这个世界的一些万象看成如同梦境一样的不真实。那这个不管是白天的这个是生活上的经验，或者是晚上的自己的梦境呢，它本质上都是一样的，这个虚幻的，都是众缘和的。我们要这样子的去关照。那这就是弥勒日巴祖师所讲到的这个醒梦一如的这个道理的一个境界。那么我们在梦中造出了大千世界，但是它跟觉醒过来的时候的我们的觉知的这个本质是一样，都是一切如幻的。只是因为凡夫执它为实，所以这个而有差别。我们就要知道，在死亡的时候，我们身体是不会走的，但是意识会继续存留。那么当我们意识从中脉中出去的时候，如果我们不知道心性的本质的话，这是危险，只会让我们的状况越来越糟糕。所以外在都是由五大组成，内在是五烦恼，然后透过这个转化成成熟，能够转化成五智慧。那这个在这个普贤王祈愿论里面讲得很清楚，如何让我们的心识能够成熟。这就是我鼓励大家常念这个普贤王如来祈愿文的这个道理。那我们知道说这个本初智跟这个我们提到本初智跟凡夫意识之间的不同，主要差别就是在成熟的这个境界不同。当我们内心心识能够成熟的时候，整个法界跟我们的心识也同时都是成熟，这就是所谓的解脱的这个境界。那么如果说我们不要再继续受苦，应该往这条道上再走。那这个就是普贤王如来祈愿文里面有讲到这个就是三界不疑不恐惧，于五妙欲不贪恋，自生无念心事中，这样子。弥勒日巴祖师也讲的说，我不见意识，只见本初智，就是只见佛。当 我们这个见身心如幻的话，只了知它是众缘和合无常的道理，我们就知道说这是大手印的这个道理。那佛教徒我们要去了解究竟的见地，就是能够去除我们常见或者是断见这二边的这个见解，我们自己佛性中的这个空性能够对治我们对常见的执着，本性中的这个明性呢，清明的觉性呢，它可以对治我们执着断见的这种执着。那如果说能够这样子的反思的话，可以去除一切的这个疑惑。那么我们要知道一切的疑惑事实上是我们自己来自于我们自己的，是我们自己造出来的。那我们到底是要解脱什么呢？解脱受苦这个因，如果说我们能够了解这个的运作，那我们就知道心是如何能够来运作，如何能够成熟，也在此这个祈请愿众生都能够这个成熟，也就是一切众生皆令成熟之这一句话。
So what is the ultimate, the actual ripening or maturing? And what is the kind of feeling of it? So how can we recognize it? Yeah. So the Drikung Master Dhammaraja had explained, when he explained the secret mantra teachings on the appearances, sounds, and awareness, the nature of appearances, sounds, and awareness. So he said that when you realize that all that appears and exists is the divine form of the deity, then you have perfected the generation stage of the secret mantra. And you recognize all as the deity when you recognize, as it is said in the Dzogchen teachings, the original purity of all. Or in Mahamudra it is called the fundamental purity of the ground. And so this is the experience of feeling that arises. It is an experience of the original purity of all. And also, Minling Dechen, when he passed away on his throne, he passed away on his throne, and the last words he said was that all ripens and all dissolves finally into the vast expanse of the Dharmakaya, and then he passed away. So when all ripens into the Dharmakaya, this is also actually explained in the very beginning of the Sekangma prayer that we mentioned some time ago, where in the beginning we pay homage, we prostrate to the king of views, one's own awareness. And so now sentient beings are wandering endlessly in samsara, grasping at the true existence of appearances. And once they realize the view once they see their true nature, they see that all of that does not actually exist inherently. They begin to see all of that as illusions. So therefore, it is also said in the prayer that like beings, samsara and samsaric beings are seen as illusory by nature. See them as illusory by nature. And in Mahamudra teaching given by Saraham, he said that look at your own awareness. Look at your mind. Should look at itself. And by looking at your true nature, when you see your true nature, the true attainment will be, like true realization will be attained. And he said also that state of this undistracted state that views its own true nature is the state of Mahamudra. And once you see your own true nature, everything appears as Mahamudra. Everything becomes Mahamudra. Everything becomes vast. So the mind, the experience of this mind is extremely clear and empty and vast like space, and there is an awareness knowing, this vast expanse. There's awareness of the vast expanse. So that is what Milarepa referred to as I see primordial wisdom. And primordial wisdom and Mahamudra are one and the same thing. And this view is what dispels all mistaken views. For example, we speak about more than 230 mistaken views and so on. They are all dispelled just through the natural state of the mind, which we call the view. Also in a previous verse we have said, it made all dissolve, settle in the natural state. So that's related to this, the natural state of appearances, sounds, and awareness. Those three we also call them the three vajras. Also in the Heart Sutra, for example, it speaks about the perfection of wisdom. It says that it is the perfection of wisdom is inexpressible in being beyond words and beyond thoughts. And it also says there that it is the sphere of experience of self-knowing primordial awareness. So self-knowing primordial awareness experiences the true nature of appearances, sound, and mind or awareness, the three vajras. So that means the experience of primordial awareness is that all appearances are the deity and all the sounds are the mantra. In the 37 Bodhisattva Practices, it says, appearances are one's own mind. From the beginning, mind's nature is free from the extremes of elaboration. So once you know that your true nature, you will instantly know the nature of all samsara and nirvana, and you achieve a state of one taste. What does this actually mean, to ripen or mature into this state of one taste? So it is that when you realize one taste, then a diversity appears as one taste. So although samsara and nirvana are vast, it all arises from this one mind. And then one taste appears as diversity. And then a great multitude of divine forms arise from the mind. For example, it is just like having 100 phones that are all powered by the same electricity. So once you understand the nature of electricity, you know it's all the same. My phone is powered by the same electricity than anyone else's phone. So this is what is meant here with ripening sentient beings or liberating them. And so first you understand that, and if simply an understanding arises in your mind, then you build from that by experiencing this understanding over and over again. So that is when a very strong, a coarse thought arises in the mind, then that thought becomes completely overpowered, destroyed by primordial awareness. So primordial awareness destroys the thought. But this is what we call a practice has to be imbued with experience, meaning that practice has to be brought into your day-to-day activities in whatever you do continuously. And so if you eventually are able to stay single-pointedly continuously, you achieve the stage of single-pointedness. And then when that does not require much difficulty anymore to stay in that state, then that is called the state that is free from elaboration. And then once you reach the stage of one taste, then there is no more effort whatsoever. You just naturally stay within that state. And then once you reach the stage of non-meditation, then there's nothing else to be done. Everything is completed, accomplished. So anyways, this is how you ripen, and ripening happens gradually. So Dhamma friends, now please take a break for 20 minutes. All friends, please rest for 20 minutes.
I will take care of our home.
阿
那么这个什么叫做是究竟的成熟的？要如何能够才能够了知呢？这个直供嘎觉达玛拉扎这讲就是说，我们就是密咒这个觉知跟这个有一切的音声呢，这个外相呢，它的本质一切都是了知这一切的都是本尊的显现，这就是圆满我们的这个修行。那在大圆满里面也有讲到说，圆满本身清净的个基地基础，一切的本质都是清净的。那明居这个他这一位上师，他在最后是在法座上舍报的。那他在舍报之前呢，他就讲的这样的一个偈在走的，就是一切融入法身。那么讲了之后，他就舍报了。那么这个也是讲这个我们甚至我们在这个色康玛这个密咒这个七支供养的一开始我们有讲到，就是礼拜我们自己的这个觉性，这个如同像国王一般。那凡夫在轮回中执一切为实，如果说我们能够见到他真正的这个自性的话，那我们就能够知道这些外相都是不真实的，都不是不实存的，那都是幻象的，都是这个轮回以及轮回的众生的本质都是如幻的。那么这个大手印的这个我们要做的这个就是反观自己的觉性，那以心见心。那当我们是见到这个真心的自心的本性的时候，可能有一个真实的这个证悟。那么这一个境界是没有阻碍的一个真实的境界，这个就是大手印，就是一切都是大手印，它是非常的广大，非常的清楚，非常的深远的。那么弥日巴祖师也就是在这种情况下讲到说，我见一切本出自，这个就是大手印，摧毁我们对一切外在实为实的这种执着，只见到这个自心。那么我们这个我们要做的是，我们这个安住在我们心性自然状态之中，对于一切的外相、一切的音声跟一切的名觉呢，都能够了知，它都是心性的展现。在心经里面也有这样子的讲，我们要见一切，这个是超越我们的这个语言，我们的文字能够表达的自己的名觉。我们要知道这个一切的显现就是本尊的化现，一切的音声等于是咒语，一切的名觉之心是本自心，这个是三金刚。那这是佛子行37颂22偈讲到，诸事显现为自心，心性本离，细论边，知以当于二取相，不作意是佛子行。那我们如果说见到自己的本心的自心的本性的话，它是超越轮回跟涅槃的，这一切就是一位。什么叫做一位呢？就是多回归于一。我们见到的一切外相呢，它的本质都是一样的，都是由一心而成的。那同样的一也可以化现为多，就好像这个我们的手机虽然说是有很多个不同的手机，但是它都是因为有电才能操作，你的手机我的手机都是因为有电而才能够运用的。那如果我们能够用这种道理了解我们自己的心性的话，我们可以反复的这样来做训练，一些比较粗的这个念头它显现了，我们就会了知，然后让它解脱，让它回归到本初自。这日常生活中的经验我们要常常运用，能够让自己安住在一个专一的这个境界，这是专一瑜伽，再进一步到的离系，再来进一步到一位，到最后的无修瑜伽。等到我们真正到了无修瑜伽的时候，我们就不需要任何的这种造作了，那这是一种自然任运的一个过程的状态。那我们休息一下，也谢谢各位法友。Om Ahom。
살면 되지. 이 주제 걸고 차성상. 주로는 받아다시 하디 주로 홀로 꼬바디 다리 공은 쪽으로 제가 제시야 주전 홀로 시바들 때 사주전 홀로 남주전 홀로 상화주전 홀로 섬요리 되게 사주전 홀로 꼬안에 다 라마 개위시는 막 고바 군이 시에다 플로다 줍다 라서바 또 강도 장난 거요 대탐지 사활이 홀로서 네 데라티 디 치와테다 총마더니 종바 소소는 하더니 주소들이 미지로 록데 주소들 들이 같이 그 배차도 같이 그 강바도 들이 데려주 그들이 다가 주소도 그 주소도 종바는 거 주소도 하장기 쳔보리 들이 밤조면이 주영이 제도 요와 탐제나 들이다 로트고 요 말이 주고도 요 말이 이제 남주적 홀로들은 진짜다 사주적 홀로 꼴로 잘라들이 주소 똑바로 그듯이와 주소로 그듯이만 이제 가다 상속의 조정의 성만 로등의 미적 버대가 성경은 이만일 끝에 당계도 이런 것도 저기 이만을 끝에 이게다 풀어야지 주소로 로랑지 주소 가려면 주로 가려면 제일 샤데자 다니게 내까지 좀 저쪽 때문에 강방을 내 추구들이 대면 직접면에 기술이라는 거 대치적으로 피받아 되어가지고 대탑지 또 추적 홀로그 체들이 대략들이 로랑 민지는 대략들이 진짜 정보가 되는 몇 가지 브레이크 맥세 두고 레이드브레이크는 저기는 좋아요 그랬지 좋아하면 다 봐요 그랬지 저기는 레이드브레이크 그랬지 체들이 수막까지 다들 야, 마마한테 다들 스마카체 다들 레드비 하고도 라서랑 그다음에 출입임에 그것도 그 필름을 대다 봤더니 대다 남주도 걸어들에
所以在这个斯康玛的祈愿文呢，这个在一直到了第10页的第1季都是这个广宣供养的，然后第2季呢，外内密种外内密灭种种之供养，这个等等都是就是刚讲出来，应该是说到这边都是第1支跟第2支，第2支就是广修供养，然后第3支呢就是万法本始清净即心性自他二相好坏分别中所具一切贪爱于一个一忏悔之处，清净就是忏悔业障。第11页的这1季皆是3句分别代表的第4支是随喜功德，第5支请转法轮，以及现在要讲的第6支请佛注释。然后第12页第1季开始就是第7支，也就是普皆回向。
당시 톡상제에 사직이 상문으로 차은 거예요. 그래서 차은 거, 제를 때는 이제 가서 단체를 구바시오. 기세라는 건가. 대다수는 하정 침몰이 때를 삭바도 동대는 하더니 견디게 주소도 저들이 하정 쌓아 침몰이 대탐지 추적 걸로고 이제 소화 추적 걸로들이 따라하는 게 너무 내반이 도도는 고속 좀 제라 이치지 동당 것들이 나갔다 왔다 동들이 되게 야다고 생각하는 초바 섭집에서 먹고서 담고 죽기를 저러고 만두가를 들었지 삼바체메 바테가 되니 생기지 난징이를 한 박차데 로아를 또 민속서데 난징이를 한 박차를 봐도 니들 것도 여러래 요 그때 다 우고 지마한테는 하는 그때 사족세고 이에다 난징이 시작해서 뭐 박차 다 따라 시작도 그래 배제다가 섭집에 잡아 추정 걸어다지 첫주전 걸로 남주전 걸로 남주수상세바 라는 양면세바 송어주전 걸로더니 동쪽을 먼저 같이 이때 서동상성 주전 걸로더 마대가 그 쇼고 상성 하정 같이 몰래 들이 다 주전 걸로 하는데 다들이 참석하는
So, Dharma friends, we are still in the branch, the branch of requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma, and there was one point on that I wanted to mention, but I forgot to mention it before. But it also belongs to this verse here, actually, and that is, so there are 3 aspects to this request of turning the wheel of Dharma, and that is as an outer, inner, and a secret aspect. So the outer aspect of requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma is, for example, the different lamas, the spiritual teachers, all over the place engage in outer Dharma activities. So, for example, they are building monasteries and Dharma centers and kshetras, colleges, monastic colleges, and retreat places and so forth, schools. So they engage in these activities. So that's why it is called the karmic wheel, or the wheel of enlightened activity. And some perform these activities in a really vast sense. And then there are very more smaller activities that happen too, but they're actually extremely precious. So, for example, like a smaller activity of turning the outer wheel of Dharma is, for example, if you just have a small town where you start a Dharma center, and if even 4 people come together and practice there together, it is extremely precious. And everyone contributes in their own ways, in whichever way they can. For example, those who have the financial means, they make donations, or those who have a house that maybe they like offer their house for the center, or those other people help through their voluntary service or anything. So many centers have been built in these towns, and that's really very beneficial. Because there are many people who really want to practice the Dharma. Many people do not have a lot of money, and they want to practice the Dharma, and they have nowhere to go otherwise if there wouldn't be a small center in your town. And if there is a center, then those people who can't go elsewhere to practice, they can go there and they can practice the Dharma. Otherwise, they have no chance. So that's the outer turning of the wheel of Dharma. And then the inner aspect of turning of the wheel of Dharma is, so for example, it is said in the Bodhicharyavatara that relates to the benefits of having a center, for example. It says that the Buddha's teachings are the only medicine for the suffering of sentient beings. Therefore, one should praise and serve the twofold teachings of the Buddha. So that could look like in the form of offering service, for example, to a Dharma center, and any religion, any kind of lineage, it doesn't matter, to help them, maybe through donations, through service, or in whichever way you can. And even if you cannot help in any external way, you can just rejoice and receive the same benefit. So again, this is all the outer turning of the wheel of Dharma. And through that, what happens is that the people who go to this Dharma center, then the Dharma center will open their eyes to karma. And once they understand karma, they understand also that this life is impermanent and one day we will die. And when we die, then karma continues to work. And so it is said that if you wish to know what you did in the past, look at your present body. If you wish to know where you will go next, look at your present actions. If you understand karma, anyone who understands karma will be able to observe their own laws, the laws just naturally. So anyways, this is all the outer turning of the wheel of Dharma, and then the inner turning of the wheel of Dharma is, so having established such a place for people, which is the outer aspect, then the inner aspect is that people can actually study and they can reflect and they can practice, they can learn the Dharma there. And that is really why the Dharma center any Dharma center is so important. It's extremely important. And with that in mind, many disciples have founded different Dharma centers in various places. And people have contributed in many ways. Some have, for example, donated things, some have printed texts, and so on. There's only a good quality, but if a fault arises in a Dharma center, then it happens often due to jealousy. For example, between a guru and disciple, and disciples, and so forth. And so that can be it could be extremely dangerous. And we have to be very careful with that because, for example, if there's a Lama who has a large following, and so through the teachings he was able to open the eyes to karma of thousands of disciples. And then one person comes along and just tries to find the slightest fault, anything wrong with that Lama. And then basically finds that little fault of the Lama, but kind of shames all of the Buddha's teachings for it. And actually it is said that there is nothing worse than to criticize a bodhisattva's activities, or to try to expose their faults. Because when we do that, so this Lama, let's say, has opened the eyes to karma and so on, to the Dharma, to thousands of disciples, and then if one comes along and just speaks about that Lama's faults, then maybe thousands of disciples will turn away from the Dharma. They will lose their faith. And that is extremely harmful for them. And for example, it's like a bridge over a river. And if you just, actually it is said that if there's just a slight damage to the bridge, it will just collapse. So you're looking for a tiny fault of that guru, you make that whole bridge collapse. And people will turn away from the Dharma, and that is extremely dangerous. Cha Miram Rinpoche also said in the prayer of Sukhavati, he said that it is a greater downfall, a greater fault to humiliate or openly denigrate a bodhisattva than it is to kill all the sentient beings in the three realms. What it means is because they are passing on the teachings of the Buddha, which is the only medicine, the only source of benefit and happiness of all sentient beings, and through their teachings, many countless sentient beings can become liberated. Anyone who sees a bodhisattva has a seed of liberation planted, for example, or just hears of a bodhisattva and so on. For example, if we just hear the words, the teachings or so of a bodhisattva, then already such a person has that seed of liberation planted in their mind. So that is why the noble Sangha is extremely precious. And actually anyone who has taken the refuge vow is a Sangha. And we should see them purely for this reason, so which means the body of a Sangha is the Sangha, and the speech is the Dharma, and the mind is the Buddha. The Sangha really is the seed of there are many seeds, they're all seeds of the Buddha. And therefore, if we respect the Sangha, then that is an incredible merit. And a Dharma center is a community of the Sangha, and that is why just a small Dharma center in a town is just extremely precious. And that is a place where the wheel of Dharma is being turned. So the outer wheel of Dharma is the outer center, and the inner wheel of Dharma is people going there and practicing there. And then the secret Dharma wheel is that then somebody who practices will eventually realize the nature of the mind or the twofold truth. So first they cultivate trust in the relative truth, which is karma, and then as a result of that, they realize the ultimate truth, which is the nature of their mind. And once one has realized the nature of mind, their mind becomes vast. And then they can pervade all the Pure Lands, all the Buddhas with limitless offerings, for example. And that's what we call the limitless cloud offerings of Samantabhadra, offering clouds of Samantabhadra. And they are able to pervade all sentient beings in samsara, however many there are, and liberate them from their negative karma and habitual imprints, their self-grasping. Sentient beings suffer in the three lower realms, but so someone who has realized the nature of the mind realizes that even though sentient beings suffer in the lower realms, there are no ultimately real sentient beings that exist. It is just a temporary projection of their own karmic imprints, but ultimately that is not their true nature. It is just that this is what they believe for the time being. But they realize that all of this is illusory. And so once one realizes that, one can easily seal the mind of self-grasping with bodhicitta, right there and then. And in that moment, all fixation to a concrete reality will collapse. So that is the secret turning of the wheel of Dharma. So there was the outer and the inner and the secret. So the outer is the outer establishments, the inner is the inner practice of listening, reflecting, and meditating. And then the secret really is to realize the ultimate truth through meditation practice. So that's what I wanted to share on the three kinds of turning of the wheel of Dharma. It's extremely important. So this completes the branch of requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma.
诸位法友，我们继续来讲。我们刚刚讲到请转法轮，我本来要讲一点，但是忘了在这边再跟大家补充。我们讲到请转法轮，它有外内密3个层次。那外的不同的上师在不同的地方转法轮，比如说开创一个中心啊，带领大家做闭关啊，给予法教啊、法会啊，或者是说这个大家请法，或者是成立一个佛学院啊等等，这些都是转法轮。那这个是通往正悟轮的这个事业。那有些人的事业很大，有些很小，但也是非常弥足珍贵的。比如说在一个小镇成立一个中心，即使有4个人来共修，这也是非常珍贵的。有钱出钱，有力出力，有人有房子，有这个空间的可以让大家来使用，那各自可以担任义工，分享一切。那么在这个小镇上，对这个小镇是很有利益的，因为有些人想修法，没有钱，没有地方可以去。如果有一个小小的中心也可以修法，要不然的话就没有办法修法。在《入菩萨行论》里面讲到，有一个佛教中心、佛法中心的这个利益，我们因为佛法为这个解脱众生这苦的唯一的这个道路，所以呢，我们可以为佛陀的这个法教来提供做义工，来做服务，不管是义工也好，或者是说在各种任何的宗教、任何的传承一样，可以出钱，可以出力担任义工，或者是什么都不能做也可以随喜，那这样也可以得到同样的这个功能。那么可为到这个中心的这个法友，帮助他们开的，他们了解这个业的印记，这个了解业的作用的这个眼睛，能够了知到人生无常的道理，然后继续在修行道路上走。那这就是我们过去讲到的，多次提到的欲知过去因今生受者是，欲知来世果今生作者是，能够了解这种业跟因果的这个道理。那么如果说我们对于业有了解的话，就可以观察自心的内在的一个情况。除了外在的像这个向度之外呢，内在呢，那人可以在做的透过闻思修的这个修持。所以这个有的这个中心有这种方便，这个是很重要的。因为很多弟子在各个地方成立这个中心，那么有整合的不同的这个资源来利益这个地方的人。那如果说这个中心有过患的话，一般是来自于嫉妒心的，比如说这个是很危险的事，比如说上师跟弟子之间产生的这个嫉妒心。那如果说一个上师他教了1000个弟子，可是有人来找上师的找茬，来专门找上师的这个小小的过患而来宣扬他那个羞辱他，那么等于这是羞辱的佛陀的法教。那么他们的这种批评菩萨的行止是最大的过患。那或许这1000多个人就对这个上师失去信心，就离开了，这样子对他们来讲也是很不好的。所以呢，这个就好像是要渡河的一个桥，只有一座桥在那里。当你在桥上出现了一个小洞的时候，有的时候它会危及到整个桥就塌了，你怎么过河呢？所以在这个恰美仁波切的这个极乐列云文里面也有提到，就是说我们的过患，这个在公开的场合批评菩萨的这种过患是远大于杀害一切众生的有情众生的这种过患的。那么因为这些菩萨呢有对这个众生离苦，能够帮助众生离苦得乐的这个法要，所以我们如果听到这个众生听到菩萨的这个传法，已经种下解脱的这个种子了。所以我们要知道说，皈依三宝的已经是僧团的一份子，我们的身体就是僧宝，我们的所讲的语言就是法宝，我们的意念就是佛宝。所以呢这个我们要礼敬的尊敬，对僧团很尊敬。是一个中心就是一个僧团活动的一个地方，这个根据地，这个也是 这样的一个社区，这样子是非常珍贵的。所以除了外跟内之外，还有秘密的层次，我们的修持，这个我们修行者呢，我们了知心性的这个本来那个面貌，修持二谛，就是相对谛，就是了解明白因果业力的道理。那究竟义呢，就是了解心性的本性。那么我们心可以变得很广大，是遍一切诸佛净土的，能够行供养云的。那这是对上，这个就是所谓的普贤无量的供养云。那么对下呢，就是解脱就六道众生的这种对执着的这种苦。所以了知心性的人能够知道说，众生虽然存在于六道，或者是在恶道，但毕竟没有众生实存的这个实相在那里，一切都是暂时的这个投射，心的投射，而不会去执它为真实的，究竟是不在那里的。那我们要对这个以菩提心来封印他们的自己的内在的心思，那么一切的执着呢，就在菩提心的前提之下会崩坏。那么这个就是也是这个禅修的这个一个这个境界的结果。好，我们再来继续听。
So then there's now one very important thing and a special point to be made here also in terms of the turning of the wheel of Dharma, and that is that also those activities of in the various countries to translate all the teachings into your different languages in the various countries is to turn the wheel of Dharma, or to translate the texts, to translate Dharma teachings, to edit them, to proofread them and so on, to print them and make books out of them and distribute them. So all of these books, all of this is to turn the wheel of Dharma. And there are the 10 kind of commitments of distributing the Dharma Activity, and so some of them are giving the Dharma and composing the Dharma and reading and reciting the Dharma and teaching the Dharma, so explaining the Dharma, and also translating the Dharma and printing the Dharma, editing the Dharma, and so forth. And then translating them into various different languages. And all of that is to turn the wheel of Dharma. And therefore also having discussion groups, discussing the Dharma with each other is to turn the wheel of Dharma, because in this way disciples can help each other understand the Dharma. So the Dharma is like rain, and the mind, the Buddha nature of all sentient beings is like the seeds in the ground. And when the rain falls down, the seeds will ripen. So somebody who explains the Dharma and who discusses the Dharma and so forth and teaches the Dharma must have an experience of the Dharma first. Then the words will be beneficial. So first we need to understand, and second one we need to experience, and then in the end we need to realize. These three must come together. And these come together. These three are accomplished through Dharma practice, and so that's why the Dharma translators are really extremely precious, extremely beneficial. So for example, when a spiritual teacher gives a teaching, and then the translator translates the teaching, and actually, the translator is only able to convey it in a way that is understood by others if the translator themselves has understood the meaning of what is being said, and not only understood the words. So if one only understands the words, then there is not so much benefit. There's still a little bit of benefit, of course, in translating these words, But the real benefit to others is accomplished when they themselves understand the meaning. And so when they understand the meaning, then those who listen will naturally receive the meaning. They will understand the meaning. And so in this way, others are benefited. So it is a translator is someone who really understands the words of the teachings and really the meaning of the words, and has really thought about them themselves and really internalized it, and therefore is able to convey it. If they would not have understanding of those words, they wouldn't be able to just tell people the meaning easily. So I myself, however, I'm not someone who knows anything really, but people put me on a high throne, a high chair. And so since I'm in this position, then I keep thinking, how can I really benefit them? And I can say that I have understood the nature of phenomena, the nature of the mind, and that is of some benefit, surely. But really I find that the disciples have been extremely kind to me, because the fact that I know how to teach at least a little bit is because of the kindness of the disciples, and also the efforts made by the translators to convey these teachings. So in this way, we should make effort in the Dharma, and it's very beneficial that if in your own places, wherever you are, you organize discussion groups with each other and discuss the Dharma. That really is to turn the wheel of Dharma. That's really a Buddha activity, an enlightened activity. So our Buddha nature is one and the same, and the Dharma is love and compassion. And so someone who understands the Dharma and has experience in the Dharma will be able to convey the Dharma in a way that is understood by others. And so such a person is a Sangha. Therefore, I encourage you, wherever you are, to engage in such activities, because discussion groups and so on really are an activity of a Buddha, an enlightened activity, and really there is no greater way than to have these kind of discussion groups in order to accumulate merit. It's the greatest way to accumulate merit. It's of the greatest benefit in order to become liberated from the 6 realms of samsara. So again, I would like to say thank you to the translators and who have translated teachings and books, and then also those who have edited those books and who have sponsored those books or have printed those books and have distributed those books and so on. So to all of them, I'm extremely grateful. And that all is to turn the wheel of Dharma. So it's very important to engage in such activities to increase the Dharma.
另外一个重点呢，我要关于这个清专法，我要讲的就是我的这些在很多的不同的国家，有一些佛法翻译成不同的语言，这也是转法门。那么不管你是翻译佛陀的这个法教，或者是书籍，或者是你的编辑，那个或者是说教导， 或者是就是把它印出来，或者是分送，这些都是所谓的转法门。那么这个佛法的有这样子有助于佛法的这个传播，那个翻译的佛法啦，能够的持修佛法、教导佛法啦，或者是说给予这个课程呢，或者是说出书、印书、这个送书，这种佛教的这个小组讨论，这些等等都是转法轮的这种事业，那是彼此这个帮助，在这个修行的道上能够进步，这是 非常好的这个修行。那么 那么我们在佛法上呢，首先呢，必须要翻译者要能够了解这个其意，那么帮助众生在这个透过上师的法教呢，帮助众生能够了解其意，在心中种下这个成熟的这个种子。那么这个指导者应该先有这本身的这个经验，那有了他的修持的体验之后，他讲的才能够真正利益到别人。那么再来呢，第三个阶段就是要这个证悟，这三个步骤都是很珍贵的。那么我们有一个翻译的这样子的人是非常珍贵的。我们要知道上师给予法教，那么能讲的也是有限，但是翻译的人自己要能够了解他的意思，才能够翻译。如果只是仅翻译这个字面上的意思的话，当然也是有利益，但是这个利益是比较小的。所以我们对法真正的了解，能够别人就能够透过你的这个翻译呢，能够得到利益。所以呢，自己这个翻译呢，自己应该要好好的能够了解佛法，去思维，再把它内化。要不然的话，他对于这个翻译，这个给人家翻译的这个利益呢，就比较有限的。我自己所学是非常有限的，那我也没办法在这边法座上给予各位很好的法教，只是呢，因为大众生这个学生对我非常的慈悲，所以我也既然在这个位置上，我也经常思问我要怎么做才能够好好的来利益众生呢？那么但是大家都对我非常的慈悲，我才会尽力来讲，然后以及透过翻译者的这个慈悲呢，我才能够给这些法教。那么大家另外一点呢，就是大家要尽量的成立不同的这个佛学的讨论小组，这样是很有利益的。所谓的佛就是我们的心意的本质是相同的，所谓的法呢，就是我们的慈悲心。我们要对法有了解的人，能够对他人这个解释他的意思，他们这些人就是僧团。所以这些佛法的讨论小组是佛陀证悟事业一个非常好的一个最好的一种修持。那么我也在这边也要感谢各位翻译，因为透过你们这个不管是在法教的翻译、书本的翻译，或者是编辑，或者是说刚刚讲的校稿，那能够功德主能够出资，能够来印这些法，让这些佛法能够传播，或者把它印出来，或者分送这些佛陀的法教，这些都是很好的，我非常的感激。这也都是转法轮的诸种面向，也都是能够帮我们增益佛法的。
So to me, all the translators or the interpreters and also the translators of texts and so on, I really see them as actual Buddhas. I can really say they are Buddhas. And some people maybe won't see it that way, and they say, how can they be Buddhas? And there would be too many Buddhas if they all would be Buddhas. But that's not how it is. We can say that really they are Buddhas because where did I learn that actually? There was this great Geshe, Drepung Geshe Ngawang Punsok, from whom I've received the Mahayana Sojong vows. And so in this text that he gave, he says in there that so there was this request or teaching that was requested by